Oh, wow.
Say, I am strong.
Oh, yes.
Say, I am smart.
I am smart.
Say, I work hard.
I work hard.
I am beautiful.
I am beautiful.
I am respectful.
I am faithful.
Yes. Say, I'm not better than anyone.
I'm not better than anyone.
Nobody's better than me.
No one's better than me.
I am amazing.
I am amazing.
I am great.
I am great.
What's your name?
Ayleen Augustine.
If you fall,
I get back up.
what are you?
I'm blessed.
Yes. Say thank you, God,
Thank you, God,
for making me
for making me
the greatest.
the greatest.
There's nobody
There's nobody
better
better
than me.
than me.
All right, you're fine.
That was pretty awesome.
Oh, my God.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were all raised that way?
When we think about fathers, there's light and shadow in everything and everyone, including being a parent. Some people seem to be able to embrace it a little bit more easily than others. No, you can leave that. We're going to be having some more, but thank you. And for some, it's a struggle. I grew up with 2 Air Force sergeants as my parents. After my mother got married, at that time, it was not allowed to be pregnant and in the military. So she retired and produced children for my father, April of 1960, April of 1961, August of 1962, and October of 1963. 2 boys and 2 girls.
Wow.
After the birth of my younger brother, my mother informed my father that he had 2 sons to carry on his name, 2 daughters to marry off. So like the milkman, she was no longer making deliveries. And I spent most of my time being raised by my mother because my father was overseas. He was still active duty. And, well, usually everybody knew when my father was home because that's when my mother would turn up pregnant again. But as we grew older, I realized how much I missed him. When he would come home, I mean, my mother would, she loved my father coming home, and yet he disrupted her schedule. She had us on a very strict one. And when he came home, he wanted to go and play. She goes, no, it's noon, it's time for lunch. No, we're gonna go to the park, but it's noon, it's time for lunch.
Uh-oh.
And she would say that she had to spend weeks getting us back on schedule after my father was there. But he wanted so much to be able to spend time with us. He wanted so much to be able to be with us, to find out everything that he could find out about us. And then he would have to say goodbye. And I would write him letters, and he would write me back. And it was strange having that kind of relationship with my father. But it was the only one I really knew. And then my father retired from the military. And he was the strongest person that I knew. And I think that in part, when he first retired, I had a particular image of my father in my mind, because since he wasn't there most of the time, I had to fill in who he was with letters. And so I really didn't have a lot of interaction with him, and yet I adored him beyond belief. My sister was more like my mother, so the 2 of them sort of bonded. I was more like my father. And I knew exactly how he liked his feet rubbed. When he was sick, I would fold a little paper hat, draw a little cross on the front, and I was his nurse. And I put on my white bathrobe, and that was my nurse's gown. And I gave him a bell and said, well, Daddy, when you need something, you ring this, but I'll be checking on you. And I would come in and look at my Cinderella watch and put my hand on his wrist because I saw that that was done in doctor shows. I must have taken his temperature a dozen times through the day. And sometimes he gently reminded me, it's like, well, sweetheart, you're a wonderful nurse, but I think I need to take a nap for a while. And I thought, well, okay, you know, it's you know, I bring him jelly beans for pill time. But it was wonderful having him full time, having him there. And I got a chance to see his wounds. One day I walked in, I was maybe 6 years old, and he was sitting in a room crying. I'd never seen my father cry. So I went up to him and I put my arms around him. It's like, Daddy, what's wrong? Are you hurt? And he looked at me, and I could see he was trying to, you know, kind of pull himself together. He said, I just missed you. And in my little 6-year-old mind, it's like, but I just went over there. I just went to the bathroom. I was here a minute ago. But something about having me leave that room may have brought back all the times that we didn't spend together. Maybe it hit him how I had grown in his absence, that he never got to see our first steps because he was away most of the time. He didn't get to be a part of birthday parties. And maybe it hit him in that moment how much he missed. He never talked about that much, but out of all of us, I was probably the one who spent the most time with him. Just because I loved hearing stories. He knew that I could hear old military stories. You know, I don't care how many times he told them. I loved them every single time. And my mother was not a physically, you know, huggy person. You know, she demonstrated her love for me to the point where I had absolutely no doubt about it. And she wasn't a physical huggy person until I had kids, until her grandchildren came along. And they say, oh, Grandma loves hugs. And it's like, look, that's not the woman I grew up with. You guys count yourselves lucky. But she always loved me. And yet there was something about being with my father. My father taught me how to hug. People have complimented me on my hugs. My father taught me how to hug.
Wow.
He said, when you hug somebody, pretend like you can make them safe from everything. And that no matter what's bothering them, you can make it better. And you hug them like that. And you believe that. And it's like, and I told him, it's like, Daddy, I can't make everything better. He said, but if you believe you can, they'll believe you can. And maybe just for a few minutes, they need to believe that someone can. So that was one of the gifts my father gave me. Another gift was learning to manage being empathic. Being an empath means that you feel what other people feel as if it's your own feeling. And that was very confusing for me. That was very overwhelming for me as a child because I couldn't separate it. So my father taught me how to utilize it because he was very accomplished at it. He was the first person to teach me that empaths could not just receive, but they could also transmit. He taught me how to read people. My dad was a very political person. He was involved in city government and all of that. And I'd go with him to his meetings. And before we walked in, he goes, all right, I want you to tell me what each one of those people think of me. I want you to just, he said, you don't ask them anything. He said, I just want you to see, what do you feel when you see them talk to me?
Wow.
And I want you to tell me who there is someone who I can trust and who there is someone who I can't. And he would do these practices. He would tell me, you know, when you first walk into a room of political people, look to see who people get up and walk to. The ones who walk around the least are the ones who have the most influence because other people come up to them. And I thought, okay. You know, he taught me how to not be intimidated. He said someone's rank, their age, or their position in life, or their wealth, he said that has nothing to do with what type of person that is. There is no reason for you to be intimidated just because someone has more wealth than you. There's no reason for you to be intimidated that maybe they know a little bit more. He said you be respectful. If they're an older person, yes, you be respectful. If they know something that you don't know, you think, and it's something you want to know, talk to them. Find out what they know so you can learn more, but never be intimidated. My father left school when he was 16. He never graduated high school. He ended up getting his GED later because at the age of 16, he rewrote his birth certificate, changed a number, and went to the Korean War. I think of my sons at 16, and I picture them in war. I picture them in a place where their life could be taken at any moment, where they're scared, where they didn't know what to do. And all they could do is follow orders and pray. And I know that really influenced my dad. It influenced him to want to be strong. He did not have a good relationship with his father. He felt very intimidated by his father. And the odd thing is, he and his father were so much alike. But it was difficult. It was difficult for him because his father didn't know how to be a father. My dad, once when he was little, was sent with $5, and back in the day, $5 was a lot of money to go to the store with. And he lost the $5 bill. And he came back, and his father just wrecked him over it. Every time any issue came up, it was thrown in his face. Every time, it's like, see, that's why you're not a man yet. You can't handle this. To the point that we were living in Oklahoma, and he was home during that time, and we went to a park or something, and he had his wallet in his pocket, and he went to use the restroom, and his wallet had fallen out of his pocket. And so he couldn't find it. My father threw up for 3 days because of how intensely that whole childhood trauma came back to him.
Wow.
And he was physically sick for 3 days. And my mom had to really work to help him through it. And I guess that was also one of the greatest gifts. Growing up with my parents meant I saw the beauty of the balance of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. I saw how much more each person could be having that counterpart. My dad was very definite, especially with my brothers. He said, you can take me on if you think you're big enough or bad enough, but you had better never let me catch you saying a cross word or being disrespectful to your mother. We knew we would deal with Dad for that, and we knew he didn't play. So the idea that from a very early age, especially for my brothers, it was instilled in them, you will respect women. You will be courteous. My dad didn't have all the answers. He told me later, he said, you guys have no idea how much I've made up. You'd ask me questions I don't know the answer to. He would hear old jokes and repeat them. It's like, well, why is the grass green? If it were blue, you wouldn't know when to stop mowing the lawn. Okay. Yeah. And because I said so.
Well, I like that one.
But the thing is that he said, because I said so, because he didn't know any other answers. Well, just trust me on this. And as I became a parent, I realized how hard that job is. And especially for men, because, I have so much love for my brothers. Because they're now coming into a generation where it's okay to cry.
Right.
Where it's okay to be afraid. My father, if something happened to the car and my mom's like, well, fix it. My dad didn't know anything about cars. He was in communications in the military. He said that he would open up the hood and he'd stand there. And then he'd go, okay, try it now. And he'd stand there, not doing anything, praying that something would change itself. Okay, try it now. Well, you know what? It's broken. I tried everything. But he didn't know, and he couldn't admit it. You know, it wasn't okay to admit not being able to do something, to not having all the answers. And I had a lot of friends whose, you know, parents were there the whole time. Their dads were expected to know it. You need to build a Pinewood Derby car, your dad is expected to know how to do it. And I know that that must have been really hard for them, because I know it was hard for my dad. Because he had these 4 young people who he didn't have a chance to create a relationship with, who were now looking to him like, okay, you're in charge, don't mess up. And there were times he did mess up. And I know it broke his heart, because he felt he let us down. And when, you know, right before he passed, we had a chance to talk, as 2 people talk, because there were things he needed to say, things he wanted to apologize for. Points when, you know, I mean, and he was in tears. He said, I know I could have been a better father, but I was the best father that I knew how to be. And I told him, well, I've never asked for anything more than that. The most consummate moment of what it meant for him to be my father was, and some of you have heard me tell this story, we were washing dishes. My dad did not believe in dishwashers. He said that's why he had 4 kids. He had 2 dishwashers and 2 dish dryers. He didn't need to buy anything else. But we would take turns, and my dad, you know, he'd pull his turn in the kitchen too. And it was right after he retired, right afterwards. I mean, you know, I was so upset he made us a civilian. You know, it's like, you made me a civilian, Dad. No! Because I liked military. I loved military life. The worst thing I could think to call somebody at that point was a civilian.
So true.
But we were in the kitchen, and in our house, the garage that had been converted to a family room was on the opposite side, and everybody else was back there. So it was just me and my dad, and we were doing dishes. And I was a clumsy child. I really was. The only time I could actually hold my balance was if I was on like a beam or a pole. If I only had this much room to work with, I was fine. If you give me a full floor, I'm going to fall on something. I would drop things a lot. And so I was holding on to a cup, and he noticed that every time I took a glass out to dry it, that it was like, you know, I was almost trembling. And he said, what's wrong with you? And I said, I don't want to drop the glass. And he said, well, you know, you're not going to drop it. He said, why are you so upset about dropping a glass? And I looked at him, and I said, because if I drop it, then you'll get mad at me and you might not love me.
Oh, wow.
Because at that point, apparently within my little heart,
Yeah.
I needed to know, 1, that my dad was going to be there, he wasn't going away again. And 2, that he loved me. Now, my father looked at me and he said, baby, of course I love you. I would not even be angry if that glass fell and broke. I looked at him, and we talked about this later, and he said that I got this very strange look in my eye. I took the glass that I was holding and threw it to the floor.
Wow. Whoa.
And I looked at him. And he said at first he was shocked, because that was like the last thing he expected to happen. And he stood and stared at me. And he saw my eyes welling up with tears. And he knew in that moment I needed something from him. And so he went and he got the broom. And he swept up the glass, and he scooped it up, and he threw it away. And he looked at me, and he said, baby, I will love you forever. Nothing will ever change. I said, what about when you die? And he said, I will love you after I die. That was a moment that passed between us that I never even told the rest of the family about.
Wow.
After my dad passed away, I was living in Louisiana at the time. And I was walking down the hall and thinking about him and missing him. thinking that he had come back in this, you know, with his spirit inside this cat that came in and just moved into the house. It's like, and immediately it's like, God, you remind me of my father. Big black cat that just stared as if like, yes, you think you're in charge around here? I'm in charge now.
That's right.
And I was walking down the hall thinking about my dad, and all of a sudden I caught a whiff of something. And it was like, and you know when you smell something and it's like, I know this smell, I know this smell. And then I realized it was the smell of Aramis cologne,
Oh, wow.
the cologne my father wore. The cologne that not an ounce of it was in my house. And yet, in that space, in that hallway, it was filled with it. I used to tease him, sometimes he was a little heavy-handed with it. And as soon as I smelled it, I remembered the words, I will love you forever. And of course, I fell apart sobbing in the hallway.
What did the cat do?
Oddly enough, he just sat there and stared at me. Almost as if like, no, this isn't a surprise, it's okay. He came up and he kind of nuzzled me and it was like, all right.
I love it.
So, I can appreciate my father for his light and his shadow. He had issues, my brothers had issues with him because he placed a lot of demands. No, you know, you are going to be a man. If my parents went out for an evening, my dad would say, okay, here's a blank check. You find out we've been killed, cry for us later. You go to the bank, you know, you take out all the money.
Wow.
Because he said, you need to take that out because otherwise they'll lock up this account.
Wow.
He said, you guys need to know what you're going to do if something happens to us. He wanted us strong. He wanted us capable. And at his memorial service, after he passed away, the city of Milpitas did not do business for 2 days. They flew the flag at half-mast, and they held a huge memorial for him. And we were sitting there, and that was when we found out they were dedicating a park to him. And they said, you know, and they're up there like, and now we're going to have a representative from the family come up and speak. And the four of us are looking at each other like, I'm not going up there and talking. My older brother's like, you're the oldest. I'm not doing it. No. What about mom? You can't make mom do that. And my sister Angie was older than me. She goes, I'm tapping out. You know I don't talk publicly. And Andre's like, I feel my asthma coming along. And I'm like, great. So I step up there in front of hundreds of people. And I took a breath. And I heard my father say, girl, don't you embarrass me. You know what to do. You know what to say. And as I felt that presence with him, you know, and it was just like, all right. I mean, apparently I said something really cool. I have no idea what I said. But it went over well. And in that moment, you know, it was like, yeah. I wish he had been there, that I could look in his face when I became a doctor, because he would have told everybody. I mean, he told everybody when I started my period. It was like becoming a doctor he would have been ridiculous about it. And yet I know he was proud of me. So consider your relationships with either your father by blood, maybe your father by choice. I'm sure there were good things about it, and I'm sure there were things about it that were hurtful. And I know that they're sorry, even if they can't say the words. That they would say, I did the best I could with the tools I had. And I'm sorry if it wasn't good enough. I'm sorry if I damaged you. And even if they can never utter those words, know that in their heart, their spirit is saying that. We are all divine beings having a human experience. It doesn't mean that you have to, you know, allow yourself to be mistreated by anyone. You know, I'm very strong about that. Loving someone does not mean that they get a chance to, you know, treat you like anything you want. You stand up for yourself. Be as strong as my dad taught me to be. And you can love them unconditionally and still set boundaries. You can be there in spirit for them, even if in life, you know what, being physically together is not a good idea. It doesn't matter. What matters is we're all connected. What matters is that divine masculine, that hug. I was going through something and Ronnie came up and hugged me. I mean, and I may only be belt buckle high to him, but you know, he came over me and he enveloped me, and I felt that amazing masculine energy. And I have felt what it feels like when that's in perfect balance. Absolute perfect balance, and it is amazing. You know, we are greater than the sum of our parts. When we have someone who can carry that counterpart of masculine energy to our feminine energy, and it really doesn't matter what physical form you have. All women have masculine energy. All men have feminine energy. We can create harmony with that, with each other, to accept each other for exactly who we are, for our mistakes and for our victories. So consider that whoever was in your life, they loved you the best that they knew how. That may have been great. It may have been not so great. It may have been really, really bad. And if it was, I'm so sorry. But know in their hearts, there was that spark of something that was good, that was loving. They just didn't know how to bring it out. And if they brought it out, if they taught you things, if they passed on knowledge to you, that is such a blessing. Fathers are amazing. I wouldn't be here without one, and I don't think anybody else would be. We do our best, and so do they. So, right now, I'm going to be over here sharing. There was a couple of other things that I found that kind of exemplified fathers to me. After this, then the choir is going to sing again, and we're going to do our slideshow. So, hold on. That's not it. You know, when you're pulling stuff off YouTube, it's just like, wait a minute, that's not what I clicked. I clicked something else.
Right now at Kohl's, take 25% off night.
And we have ads.
25% off select shoes, apparel, and accessories for dad and the whole family. And everyone gets Kohl's.
Yes, the church has no official stance on Kohl's.
Sag mal, Papa, habe ich dich noch gar nicht gefragt. Wie kommst du eigentlich mit dem neuen iPad zurecht, was wir dir zum Geburtstag
Now,
geschenkt
she's
haben?
given him an iPad.
Oh, yeah.
Mit den ganzen Apps kommst du klar?
Look what he's doing with it.
Oh my goodness.
And the look on her face.
Okay.
Das ist irgendwie komisch.
Okay. Wait. Oh, dads are so fun. Let's see.
Oh my gosh.
So bad.
Wow.
Now, the choir is going to get up and sing. And as they're getting up, I will set up our slideshow. And I want to thank everybody who sent me a picture